Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? How's everyone doing today? If you guys have never done one of this, hi, Lisa. If you guys have never done one of these lives with me before, I come on here and chat every other Monday. It's lovely to see some of my regulars pop in. Hi, Trisha. I am coming to you all live today from Los Angeles, actually from my mom's house, which is in Covina, so that's nice. Wonderful. I'm so glad that you're doing well today, Lisa. Hi, Charisse. Lovely to see you as well. Awesome. I'm doing okay. I'm hanging in today. If you guys have never done one of these lives for me before, it looks like I've got some new people, so welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. Hi, Megan. Hi, Donna. So I do these lives every other Monday. Rick is one of my regulars. Hi, Rick. I do these talks every other Monday, and they are all about mental health. I am an actor, a filmmaker, and a mental health advocate located in Los Angeles, and I love to come on here and talk to you guys about my own mental health experience and have you all share your mental health experience with me. I think it's very, very important and valuable for us all to have open and honest dialogues about those things. Hello, everyone. Susan, TK, Santi. It's so lovely to see everyone here today. So, and hi, Matthew. So if you guys have never done one of these with me before, basically what I like to do is kind of introduce a topic and then we kind of have a dialogue. This time slot is called Tools and Resources to Address Mental Health. And one of the main reasons for that is because my mental health organization, More Than You See, I really like to focus on non-traditional mental health resources, which means that I really like to highlight like books, TED Talks, all sorts of kind of out of the box ways to address and kind of tackle our mental health, because I think it's really, really important that these kind of non-traditional ways are paired with more traditional things like therapy, medication, any of that kind of stuff. And so that's what we're really going to talk about today. And today I want to talk about anxiety. I have a mental health podcast that comes out on Mondays, and I'm on a hiatus right now with the podcast, but there is 24 episodes that you can go and listen to that are right there. You can go to Anchor and find it on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever that is, all of those sorts of things. And I recently had someone call into the podcast and discuss that they want to talk about anxiety. And so I wanted to bring up that topic with you all today, because I think that this is something that we are all feeling. And I was reading a statistic this morning that was saying that 3 million Americans a year are diagnosed with anxiety. So this is obviously something that affects a large majority of Americans. And I bet that especially during this last year, that number, I'm sure, has actually skyrocketed. And so I think that it's really important for us to talk about this today. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I already see some wonderful people who are being so vulnerable and sharing their experiences as well. So hi, Marie, and Matthew and Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing your experience about anxiety as well. So let's, as I say on my podcast, as I always remind everyone here as well, I am not a licensed practitioner or therapist. I am just a woman that is exploring my own mental health journey, and I like sharing that journey with you all. So anything that I say today is just something that I've read or something that I've experienced myself. Obviously, I am not a medical professional in any kind of way. So what is anxiety? So anxiety is often, there's a lot of different types of anxiety. And anxiety can actually kind of be an umbrella term for a lot of other things. So like OCD is a kind of anxiety. PTSD is a kind of anxiety. Having just like chronic anxiety, or there's this, like the specific type of anxiety, that like all of those things are under the umbrella of anxiety. And let's like actually look at like what that is and like what happens in your brain with that. So when you have anxiety, it's often because your like conscious brain, which is like the thing that's, constantly picking, like I can drink something. So this is like my subconscious brain that knows how to like drink out of a straw. When your subconscious brain kind of has this like external stimuli that it doesn't know how to handle, sometimes that will spiral into anxiety. And so that's where, like social situations like Mac, hi Mac, lovely to see you again. That's where, Mac says that she struggles with anxiety in social situations. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that you struggle with anxiety and depression. I mean, I think that anxiety and depression so often tie together, because oftentimes anxiety, when it is when you are feeling anxious about something, and it's not just a low level anxiety that is making that you can kind of handle yourself. So like let's say you are concerned that you're late to a movie. Like, let's just use that as an example. And let's say that you're late to a movie, but you're still able to consciously talk to yourself and be like, it's fine. There's 20 minutes of previews. I'm going to be okay, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of like anxiety that's just like anyone may experience that kind of anxiety. What I'm talking about, though, and what generalized anxiety and like diagnosed anxiety is that social situation is, or that situation like going to a movie and being late is so prevalent in your brain that it kind of is taking over all of the other thoughts that are happening. And so you aren't able to really focus on the driving, or it ruins the movie even though you're not already there, like all of those sorts of things. Basically, when your brain is kind of like taking over your conscious ability to do things and to think and to like rationalize things, that's when this generalized anxiety is actually something that a lot of people that have depression and anxiety, myself included, that's when it kind of is like taking over. Basically, like when your conscious brain can't turn off your subconscious brain and be like, hey, it's going to be okay. Your subconscious brain is kind of controlling the show. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is like what to do in those sorts of situations. And to just, share our experiences, because I think that's really, really important. Lisa shares that she has generalized anxiety. You're doing pretty well right now, and COVID really gets your anxiety up. I mean, absolutely, Lisa. I think that that's something that a lot of people are experiencing right now. I certainly do as well. And I would love to know, let's talk specifically about COVID, and let's talk about some things that we can do in order to kind of deal with the anxiety around COVID and around what's going on in our world right now. So let's look at what can be causing anxiety. Obviously, there's the idea of like catching COVID yourself and like potentially going out into the world and getting sick. That obviously causes a lot of anxiety. I know personally, the thing that actually causes me the most anxiety right now is consuming media, consuming the news, and listening to what's going on in a unfiltered, like public way, because the media and the news is really there in order to sensationalize and to promote fear in some ways, and to really, definitely, like everyone has an agenda when it comes to the news. And so I certainly know that the news has really gotten my anxiety up during COVID. I don't know if anyone else feels this or resonates with this at all. And so one of the things that I've done in order to try and control my anxiety when it comes to COVID is that I just have all of the news apps off of my phone. I just really are not, am not trying to read about COVID. Like if it's something that it is like really, really prevalent, then I have some friends who will tell me what's going on. But for the most part, I just can't delve into that at all. And it looks like some people are agreeing with me. Lisa and Marie, I completely agree. I think that just like not having it. And that's basically by setting up boundaries, which is very, very important. So setting up boundaries for yourself and vocalizing those boundaries to others to say like, hey, this is not something that I can handle. And I would really appreciate that you respect me and my boundaries by not sharing the news in that way. And so anyone who has done that, I think is very, very, it's really wonderful. And I'm very proud of anyone else who is also, setting those boundaries for yourself and for others. I think that's really important. I think that the other thing that other people are bringing up, like Rick here, is the fact that like as people are getting vaccinated and as the world is opening up in some capacity, people are beginning to disregard some of the rules. And Rick says you prefer the 6 feet distance, but people are beginning to disregard that. And then Lisa says that she masks up when in public. I think that that's fantastic. I also think that it is something that even when there is like mask mandates are lifted in some places, if it makes you comfortable to wear a mask in public, I think that it is really perfectly okay. And I applaud you for continuing to protect yourself and to protect your mental health when it comes to your anxiety. I actually was in Texas last week for work, and Texas does not have a mask mandate. No one wears masks indoors there. And I was there for 4 days and I wore a mask every single day every single moment when I was not in a room by myself. Because for me, it was very important for my mental health to feel like I was had that little bit of protection. Even if the mask wasn't helping or it was, etc., I feel like it was. And the fact that it was helping my mental health, I think was super, super important. And so that, I think, like, if that is a choice that you are making, I think that's really important because, again, it kind of like can get rid of some of your anxiety. And the biggest thing when it comes to anxiety and the biggest thing when it comes to everything is that we can only control what we can control. Like there's very little sometimes that we can control in our lives, and the things that we can control are kind of how we react to things and what we how we show up in the world and for others. And I think that that's really important, that like if you want to continue to wear a mask inside, then in order to help yourself feel safer and have less anxiety, then like absolutely all for it. I'm doing the same. So I just wanted to, say that I think is really important. So George shares that you read the news once in the morning on the BBC, and that's about it. And yeah, George shares, I mean, this is kind of the problem with what's going on right now. George shares that, not reading much about COVID, we all know what we can and cannot do without having to read 20 and 30 articles about it. Absolutely. And I think that this is where it's really important that we like kind of know what's going on in the world in some capacity, and we can try and lessen our anxiety by not consuming more stories, and just kind of like knowing our boundaries, knowing how we want to show up in the world right now, and then just continuing to live our lives in some capacity. I think that's really, really important. And Mac shares that She used to read the news almost every day and had to stop. Still read now, not as frequently. When you do, you try to read something positive or lighthearted with it. Absolutely. I have to say, I think that it's really important to have these positive presences in our lives. And like, I know, like, I have some anxiety about some things going on right now in my life. And I think the thing that has been helping me the most has been focusing on consuming positive media in some capacity. So for me right now, I'm obsessed with the show Ted Lasso. I've watched it many, many times. If you have not watched it and you have the capacity to watch Apple TV, I strongly recommend it. And I think one of the things that is so wonderful about that show is the idea that it is very strongly addressing a lot of different difficulties in people's lives and different mental health struggles, but also putting a positive spin on it, but not in a overly aggressive way. It's certainly not being, what is it called? It's not being toxically positive. It's just saying like, hey, let's look at things in a little bit of a different way, which I think can be very helpful. So someone, many comments back, I apologize, I don't remember who it was, but I saw it come across my thing. But when you're talking about fight or flight, and, that's really Kelly. Here we go. So it was Kelly. She said she struggles with anxiety in social situations, especially when there's a conflict. You go fight or flight. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's fight, flight, or freeze. Those are the three reactions that our body has to something that is causing anxiety in our social situations. And I know that I've talked about this before, but let's talk about why that is. So our brains are obviously, we are from, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years ago when we were first people. As cave people, we had very overactive nervous systems because we would be in physical peril at all times. And that's why people needed to form tribes and needed to stay within a group, because if you weren't within a group, there was the possibility that you were going to be attacked by a saber-toothed tiger or someone else. You needed to have your people in order to keep you safe. Nowadays, we, most of the world is very lucky and privileged enough that we are not in physical peril at all times. And, but our brains still have that reaction to some things. So oftentimes, and that part of our brain, like the parasympathetic nervous system, basically, when we are confronted with something that is causing us anxiety, our subconscious brain automatically is like, ooh, I'm in danger. And even if that's not true, even if it is a social situation where you aren't actually physically in peril, your brain doesn't know the difference. It thinks that this social situation is just as scary as a saber-toothed tiger attack. Obviously, consciously, we know that that's not the case, but when we are in that situation, that's how we feel, and that's how our brain reacts. And that's why it's really important to develop some different habits when it comes to anxiety and what to do in those situations. So this is where box breathing comes in. This is where there's a really wonderful technique that a lot of people have talked about on here, which is to recognize both visually, auditorily, whatever your nose smelling is. Basically what you do is, if you're feeling anxious or you're having anxiety, or if you're starting to have a panic attack, this works as well. The thing that you need to do is kind of remind your brain that you're okay, that you're safe. And what you do is you're supposed to visually, find three things in the room, just look at them and just recognize what they are. And then you're supposed to listen. So like hear 3 different things, and then also smell. And so like basically, and touch. So basically you're supposed to make sure that you are reminding yourself that you are physically okay. I think that it's really, really important. Yeah. So Kelly, you ask a really wonderful question here. So how does this work with psychosis? I also struggle with extreme anxiety when in psychotic episode, perceiving danger when it's not there. So as I said before, obviously I'm not a medical professional, but I do know that there often is, I mean, this is kind of all tied in there, is the fact that people are one of the only creatures that can have anxiety about something that hasn't even happened yet, or something that has happened in the past that we are just remembering. Like most other creatures only have anxiety when it is something that is physically endangering them right then. So like, for example, if you like see a bunny rabbit and a bunny rabbit sees you and perceives you as dangerous, that it like starts, quivering and is really nervous, etc. That is the bunny also having anxiety about the current situation, but it's only reacting right then because it saw you and was like, oh, this is dangerous, etc. But it is really, so it's basically, number one, just really important to recognize the fact that we are very unique as humans, that we can have anxiety about something that maybe hasn't happened yet and maybe will never happen. And that's where I think that it's really important. That's where the whole idea behind like being present, staying in the moment is really important. And that can be helpful in some situations, and that can also be not helpful in some situations. I know that oftentimes when people tell me like, oh, just take it one day at a time and whatever, that actually just sends me down a spiral and is actually not helpful. But I do cerebrally understand the idea of like, am I in danger right now? And if I'm not, then I need to do the like hearing, seeing, smelling, touching in order to remind myself that, again, I'm not in physical harm right now. Obviously, if you are in physical harm right now, that's a different situation. But this is about, just like generalized anxiety that is perceived, something that is a perceived danger, even if it's actually not. Again, I'm not a professional, Kelly, but I do think that it is really important to just recognize the fact that us as humans, that we have the capacity to be anxious about things that haven't happened yet and that may never happen. And I think that it's important to just recognize that. I know that something that my therapist does with me when I'm having anxiety about a situation or an experience or something that I'm anticipating to happen, any of those kind of things, what she makes me do is write down what are the worst scenarios in that thing. So for example, if I'm in a relationship and I'm really stressed about something, and that's like something where I'm, going down a rabbit hole of something, what she will tell me is she'll be like, okay, if it goes this way, if this relationship situation goes this way, what is going to happen? What is physically, emotionally, what is going to happen in your life? And I'll write that down. And then she'll go, okay, so what if the other thing happens? What's going to happen there? And that's something where like it is me recognizing oftentimes that I kind of have these tiny little Deborahs inside that are nervous or anxious about certain things going on in my life. And it's about me kind of stepping outside of myself. This sounds very woo-woo, but it does really help. Me stepping outside of myself and going, hey, little Deborahs, no matter if the worst possible thing happens that you are imagining, you're still going to be okay because I got you. You're, physically fine. You're not in peril. You're going to be okay. So I don't know if that helps you at all, Kelly, but I understand that like anxiety is something I think that's like so is so universal, but it's also so unique, because something that could be triggering you could not be triggering someone else. Something that's triggering me could not be triggering something else. And I think that this is where, when it comes to mental health in general, it's so specialized, it's so unique, and it's so important to kind of like recognize what are the things that we react to and try and control our reaction to them next time. I have to tell you that right now I'm going through something in my personal life that, like, previously I would react very, very badly to, very badly. And I feel like I'm now at a point where I'm able to kind of control my reaction to things and, have a bit more thought and control over my brain, and be like, okay, am I anxious about this because I should be anxious about it, or am I anxious because I am spiraling about something and it's because I really want this thing to happen, or whatever. It's just like allowing me to kind of step outside of myself a little bit and kind of like identify and just kind of look at my anxiety. I think that it's really, that's been really helpful for me, just to kind of like step outside of myself in some capacity. So Erin shares 3 things that you can see, hear, smell works better for you when someone guides you through the 3 things. That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Erin. And you also say that you love tapping, emotional freedom technique for your anxiety. Absolutely. I think that that's really cool. And I think that that's where it's so important to have people in our lives who we can go to and be like, hey, I'm, going down this spiral. Can you, or if you have a partner or a friend or a roommate or someone that you live with or whatever, that they can recognize the signs when you need to be led through something like those 3 different things or something like that, where they can kind of, step in for you in some capacity and help guide you through things in some way. I think that's really, important. Becca, I love what you say here about mental health is so individual. Absolutely, it completely is. And I think that that's where I really created More Than You See, because when I created More Than You See, if you listen to the first episode of my podcast, you'll hear the reason that I created it and my background behind it. And when I was going through my dark, depressive period, it was very interesting, because the things that were helping me was very different than friends of mine who were also going through, maybe not similar, but like also a depressive period. The things that were helping them was very different than the things that were helping me. And that's where I created More Than You See, because I was like, we all have so many different ways and so many different things that can catalyze us and help us feel better. And I think we kind of forget that sometimes. And it's so important to like have your own mental health toolbox that you can create. Because again, what may help me may not help you, etc. I think that's really, really important. We've got some more wonderful suggestions and questions here. Patsy says, working outside with the earth and plants is very centering. Absolutely, Patsy. I completely agree. And Jason, thank you so much for the kind words. I have to say that I love coming on here and chatting with you all. As I say every week, I think that it helps my mental health just as much as it helps everyone else's. And I always miss you guys whenever I don't do this. So I so appreciate you all being here with me. I think that it's really important. So George, thank you for validating what I'm saying here. George says, in my case, I found I tend to overthink and try to control things that I couldn't control at the time. Used to be really bad, but with CBT and meditation, it's gotten a lot better. And I agree with what I say, take a step back and question your thought. It's pretty powerful what happens to you. Absolutely. I think that that's really valuable. And I think that for me, the thing that has even elevated that as well is this idea of all of the little, like it's basically, some therapists do this. This is also kind of a spiritual thing, but this idea that there's like all of these little people that are different, your different personas that are trapped in your body in certain ways. And it's because, we have experiences from our past that have had a huge impact on who we are today. Like my parents got divorced when I was 5, and the impact that had on me is still something that I am working through and still something that affects me today. And I know that oftentimes when I'm feeling anxiety about a current situation, it's purely because I am afraid of being abandoned, which is what I felt happened to me when I was 5. And so oftentimes I know that when my anxiety is coming up because of a situation, I will step away and be like, okay, 5-year-old Deborah, I understand that you're afraid of being abandoned in this situation, but that's not what's happening here. But I think that it really is important for me to like take a step back and like look at my past trauma and kind of identify what past trauma is affecting me right now, and then decide if that's actually what's happening, because maybe it is, but maybe it's not. And I think that that's really, really valuable and really, really important to, kind of recognize. So Kelly, you say that you too are a control freak and you kind of lose yourself a bit when you don't feel in control of your environment. I mean, I'm the same way, Kelly. And as I just shared, like my parents getting divorced when I was 5, definitely a huge impact, but also it was a huge impact to the fact that like I had a younger sister. So I was very much in control of what was, trying to take care of her, trying to be the like parental figure even for her at that age. And I know that that's something that I still try to control situations now because of that. And that isn't helpful because sometimes I can't control the situation, and it just makes me feel more stressed and more anxious because I'm trying to control something that I have literally no control over. And again, it's just about like recognizing my past trauma and how that has affected me, and trying to separate that past trauma from the current situation in order to not, be controlled by our situation so much, if that makes sense. Mohammed, hello, good evening. And Michelle shares, I have so much past trauma. I mean, the thing is, Michelle, and I think that it is so, like we all have so much past trauma, and I think that we all there's definitely varying levels. And thank you very much for speaking to your past trauma. I think that we all have levels of trauma, but I also think that our trauma is so individual, just like it is, just like mental health. And it's important to just recognize what our past trauma is and recognize how it's affected us. And that's, and just kind of leave it at that and not compare ourselves to anyone else and what their past trauma is, any of that kind of thing. I mean, I think that it's really interesting because I was talking to my therapist about this abandonment thing and about like, how I was feeling, how I've felt like I need to control situations because of that fear of abandonment from when I was a child. And she was sharing a story about how she had a client who had, like, her parents were still together. She had like a wonderful childhood, like all of this stuff, like it was just idyllic life. And yet this client of hers also had a hugely strong fear of abandonment. And they were trying to figure out why that was. And they went through some exercises to help her, remember her past and stuff like that. And they realized that when she was like 6 or 7 years old, her mom had left her in a supermarket, like the aisle of a supermarket, and had only left her there for like 20 minutes. It was just like one of those things where like she didn't realize that her daughter wasn't behind her, and then found her later on. She wasn't even alone for that long. But that experience triggered such a high level of anxiety for that person that she internalized that fear of being abandoned and being left in the supermarket. And it had scarred her so deeply that she had this strong fear of abandonment that was, nothing, as I said, like we can't compare, and there's no comparison between what we feel and what someone else feels, but it was still affecting her just as strongly as my dad leaving when I was 5 and like leaving my house, and my parents getting divorced and all the trauma that came along with that. So like 2 completely different situations still had an impact in a huge way. And I think that that's why it's so important to recognize the fact that like all of our stuff was so affects us, and it's so important to just hold space for ourselves and for others, because again, what you may feel affected you, there's just no comparison between what affects you and what affects someone else, and all those sorts of things. I think that that's just really important to discuss. Santiago, I'm so glad that this talking is helping. I really appreciate it. And again, I love coming on here and chatting with you guys as well. Just so you know, the next Monday, because I usually do this every other Monday, the next Monday is actually Labor Day, so we will not be having a talk. So my next talk will be September 20th. At 1 p.m. Pacific. So I hope to see you all there. But we still have some more time. I just wanted to pop that in there right there. So Becca says, I'm just learning about this internal family systems. It's been really difficult to get the concept. So you're really new to this therapy. All of the little families operating inside of you has been an important visual. You can't remember all the different terms and functions. So like us, we're all a work in progress. Absolutely. I think that that's really awesome, Becca. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm also learning about this as well. And I think that it's so fascinating, both internal family systems as well as intergenerational trauma, like all of the things that affect, like and here's the thing, this is I think the cool part, and this is where I am so grateful for my anxiety and depression and mental health struggles. Like I really am truly grateful for being the person that I am now, because I am learning so much about people, about my brain, about other people's brains, about how we react to the world. And I think that it just makes me a more well-rounded person, a better friend, a better partner. I just think that like my greater understanding of how I show up in the world and how other people show up in the world has just allowed me to be more empathetic and try and help people in such a beautiful way. And like there was an article that I read about how people who have mental health struggles, it's because our brains have more empathy, have more capacity for feeling, and that we are allowing ourselves to sit in those feelings sometimes. And I think that of course, there's many levels to that, and there is, there's levels of depression and anxiety that can be destructive and can cause us to not be in a good, healthy place. And I think if you're here, you probably have experienced that as well as I have. But I do think that it is so important to recognize the beauty of the fact that you all have showed up here today to talk about something difficult and to talk about your own struggles and to listen to other people's struggles and to, build this community of people who are just trying to understand ourselves in the world in a better way. And I am just so grateful for this kind of community. And this is exactly why I created my podcast as well, because I just want to, bring more people together to talk about, these difficult concepts. So again, the podcast is currently on hiatus, but there's 24 incredible episodes on there. So I strongly recommend that you check it out. Darren says, a key word is emotion, because people with mental health usually suffer heavy emotionally. Yes, that is correct. Definitely, Darren. And I think that that's the thing, is that like, it just means that we have a greater capacity to feel, that our brains are recognizing the emotions of ourselves and of others. And sometimes it's destructive in the fact that we are feeling other people's anxiety or that kind of thing. And that's where, putting up boundaries and learning how to separate ourselves from other people's emotional trauma is really important. But I think that it's key to, recognize this kind of superpower that we have in some capacity. So I think that that's really important. Yes. So Mohammed says, one or two of your clients, you've been going over the past with them to see what has made them the way that they are. I think that, yes, again, that's very, very important. And I love what you say, Jason, what you call grateful, you call a living hell situation, but you're glad you can find happiness and help us. I mean, that's why I'm here. Because sometimes, Jason, I show up here and I think you were with us 2 weeks ago when I had, when I was here last time. When I showed up here 2 weeks ago, I was like, y'all, I am not in a good mood. I am feeling really shitty. And by the end of the conversation, I felt better, because I was reminded that there's other people around me who are feeling deep, shitty feelings as well. And I think that there's something, I don't know if you guys have seen the meme that's gone around before, but there's this type of pottery in Japan that when a pot or something like that breaks in Japan, they will ceremoniously heal the pot, like put the pot back together and heal it with gold filling, so that it actually, instead of like hiding the cracks, it actually illuminates them and makes them beautiful in some way. And I think that that's really beautiful and wonderful, and is such a beautiful metaphor for life. The fact that like our darkness just makes the light more beautiful. There's my dog. And oftentimes when we're feeling sad or lonely or depressed in some way, it's just a reminder of the fact that we are feeling our feelings, and that on the other side of this, there's also going to be allow us to see beauty and light and happiness. And so I think that that's really important to feel both sides of our feelings, basically. So I appreciate you all, being here with me for that. So I want to, we just have like 15 minutes left. So I want to, go back to talking a little bit more about anxiety, because I think that there's, again, as I said, like it's very individual, but I do think that there is, there's a lot of different levels of anxiety. There's a lot of different things when it comes to anxiety. I think that anxiety is one of, talking about the feelings that we're feeling and taking on other people's feelings, like being empathetic and taking on other people's feelings. This is where I think anxiety is something that is palatable and that we can, that we absorb on a high level. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me, but I certainly know that if I am with someone else who's feeling anxious, it causes my anxiety to completely spike. And I think that that's a really important thing to recognize. And there's a reason for that. Again, let's go back to looking at caveman days, and when there was this idea of everyone living in tribes and that kind of thing. If one person was feeling anxious, it was really important for that anxiety to go through the rest of the tribe so that they would understand that there was something that was causing physical harm to someone else in the community. And so they could react and help them out in some way. So like if a saber-toothed tiger was attacking the camp, that that anxiety would kind of spread through the camp and everyone would be able to come and help banish the saber-toothed tiger or whatever. So again, let's look at the fact that like today, that isn't necessarily a thing. Like if you are in a situation that is causing you to be anxious, it could often cause someone else to be anxious. And I think that it's really important to sometimes separate ourselves from the anxiety of others. And this is something that I have been working on a little bit that I would love to share with you all. This is a tool that I would love to share with you all. Is I have been working on creating a image in my head that is of something beautiful that causes me to feel safe and happy and not have anxiety. So for me, I love the beach. And so I have a very specific image in my head of like this specific beach that I love going to, the feel of the sand, what it smells like, what it feels like, all of those sorts of things. And if I'm feeling anxious and I can feel my, anxiety levels start to spike, like I can feel the adrenaline and all of that kind of thing because of the situation is causing me so much anxiety, what I am practicing and learning how to do, just like meditation, like people will, start to meditate in order to like try and banish anxiety. But I'm trying to do something a little bit different in that I have this like happy place in my brain, this imagery of this happy place in my brain. And again, if I'm feeling anxious, I will just close my eyes and try and drop my idea, physical place or my brain into that space, just to remind myself that there is this like beautiful place that I am able to visit anytime that I want because it's in my brain. And so I would strongly encourage everyone to kind of think of something that causes you to feel happy and peaceful and safe, and to think of that visualized space, and that when you are feeling that anxiety, to just kind of like close your eyes and drop yourself into that space. And that also, same thing as meditation, it kind of allows you to slow your breathing and just remind you that you're not actually in physical danger, which again is the thing that, our body thinks that we're in physical danger when we're feeling anxious. And so if you, like have that space that kind of reminds you that you are okay and kind of takes you out of that anxiety space, which I think is really, really valuable and really important. Thank you so much for everyone, all of the wonderful compliments. I so appreciate it. Jason, thank you so much, Norma. I really appreciate it. And Jason, you say, I wish we could talk with you outside your podcast. I don't know how to describe it. You seem to be directly on our level. Oh, that makes me so happy. And I have to, I do have a very active Instagram as well for More Than You See. So feel free to always reach out to me on there. I really love being, a part of the community in whatever way is possible. And just, as I said, you guys bring me a lot of joy as well. So I think it's a mutually beneficial experience here, y'all. And Michelle, I'm so glad that this is resonating with you as well. This just makes me so happy. Everyone, you guys are so sweet. Okay, so a couple other people are also saying, so George says, you have photos of your favorite holiday place. You'll bring them up on your phone, tablet, or visualize them through meditation. I think that's wonderful. Rick shares, I have an image of my back meditating in a rainy forest. That is wonderful. That's really, really great. I do think that is, again, I think who just said that? Norma said, I've been taught this tool. You definitely need to use it more. I mean, I'm the same. I am with you, Norma. And this is something that I have been taught previously by my therapist. And I kind of forgot about it until I was listening to a podcast last week. And she was talking about how she is utilizing this tool all the time. And I was like, oh man, why haven't I been doing this more? So that's why I wanted to bring it up to you all today, because I agree. I think that it's having that visualized space is really beautiful. And I think that, one of the things that this podcast host was talking about, because she was specifically talking about the entertainment industry, because as I said, I'm in the entertainment industry. I'm an actor and a producer or filmmaker. And so this podcast was about like achieving your dreams and the idea of the gold confetti moment. So like on America's Got Talent, I think it's America's Got Talent. And like when the person is on the stage and all of the gold confetti like rains down on them and everyone's like, oh, they've won, they've made it, well, whatever. And basically what this podcast guest was sharing was the idea that like you can have your gold confetti moment whenever you want. You just have to believe in it and create that in your mind. And I was like, that's actually really fascinating. And I've never thought that before. And so that's something that I've really been working on, is like creating gold confetti moments, like the things that I really, really want when it comes to my career, thinking about those things and really making them real in my head. Because then that way, if I'm feeling sad or anxious or depressed about my career or about something, I can step back into that gold confetti moment in my head and just like live there for a minute. And it is really beautiful to like have that, to have that idea of like, of something like bigger than ourselves. And, so I'm glad that is, I'm so glad Erin and Norma, you say how much you love that idea. And Jason, my goodness, I'm your gold confetti moment. That is just the sweetest. I really appreciate that. Becca, I love this idea. So Becca says, I have created song lists. You're able to choose which one you need and not have to try to find the right songs for where you're at emotionally. I think that's really valuable. I feel the same. That's actually something I'm, like, as I said, I'm an actor, and oftentimes characters will have soundtracks for me in my head. And sometimes that soundtrack or that character and that soundtrack will then affect me as a person as well. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. I was doing something this weekend. I was playing a character this weekend, and she had a very kind of like dark, broody feel to her character. And so I was listening to Linkin Park all weekend. But it actually was like very helpful for me because I was kind of in a dark, broody place in my own personal head. And so being able to like kind of listen to that music and internalize that and then bring it to the character was like really beautiful. But I think that like, even if you're not an actor, there is something so amazing about how music can touch you and, just like bring you to an emotional place in some capacity. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that's really wonderful, and I completely agree with you. So we've got about 5 more minutes. I think I saw someone that said something about like the going back to normal. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So people have anxiety about returning to normal post-pandemic. And I think I want to, just kind of end on that because I think that it is really important to address the fact that, again, our anxiety is spiking in so many ways. As I said in the beginning of this talk, 3 million people a year in the US are diagnosed with anxiety, generalized anxiety. I think that number is higher. And I think that the pandemic has caused that to spike. And I think that, again, part of that reason is because there's a collective anxiety going on. We've all gone through collective trauma over the past year and a half. I know that we are, for the most part, safe and in our homes, and maybe our lives have continued in some way, like maybe that's still the case, but we cannot discount how much this past year and a half has affected us emotionally. And it is, I think that sometimes, I myself included, that I certainly will kind of get down on myself being like, man, Deborah, why are you feeling so anxious? Why are you feeling so, like, why are you in such a bad headspace? And then I just have to remind myself the amount of collective trauma that we've gone through. They are saying that it compares to some, like, to witnessing a world war. So like, it's like, watching all of these people die because of a disease or because of whatever is going on in the world. That is traumatic. That is a huge collective trauma. It is affecting us on a huge level. And so I think that, again, I am just want to remind everyone that if you're feeling this way, your feelings are completely valid, and it is completely okay that you're feeling this way. And there's a lot of other people out there who are feeling the same, myself included. Probably most of the people on this chat are feeling this way as well. And I think that there is something really difficult about, like, trying to return to normal life in some capacity, because life is not normal. We are going back to a new version of the world than was there a year and a half ago, and we're still not even back to where we were there, and I don't think we ever will be. And I think that it's just so important to recognize that this is really freaking difficult right now, and that's okay, and that we need to just, like, be kind to ourselves and give ourselves a lot of grace and a lot of love. And, that's why I created More Than You See, because it was really about the fact that we are all multi-level. We all have so many different things that affect us. And that's just what makes us human and what makes us, really beautiful. Darren, this is like a perfect note for us to end on. I love this. The 3 most important words in your life will always be acceptance, time, and infinity. Because you have to accept your past to move on, and in time you will heal. And always remember, every situation has infinite possibilities. Oh my God, I love that so much. I want to, like, post that on our Instagram. I might actually, Darren. I hope that's okay with you, because I think that's really, really wonderful. And Heather, you just shared about your daughter is going back to school for the first time, and they, that you're scared because she's not vaccinated. I know that you're not alone in that feeling, and I'm so sorry that you are experiencing that. It is a frightening world in some capacity right now, but I hope that you do have some comfort in the fact that you aren't alone in that feeling, that there's a lot of people out there who are feeling that way. And I hope that, I think that as the months continue, we are going to learn more about how to protect ourselves as much as possible and protect our children. And I just am sending you a lot of love, and I hope that that she stays safe, and you are doing everything that you can as a parent, and that's really beautiful. Like, we can control the things that we can control, and that's it. So in any case, I've got like 1 minute left. So I just want to thank you all again for being part of this live. As I said, I do these every other Monday, but next Monday is Labor Day. So I will be coming to you in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks. So September 20th will be my next live. I will miss you all. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram during that time, as well as make sure to, listen to the podcast. There's a lot of really incredible discussions, interviews, and that kind of thing on there. I appreciate you all so much for sharing space with me. And be kind to yourselves. And I will look forward to seeing you all in a couple weeks.